I sat in the cold leather chair across from Marcus Webb's oversized mahogany desk, watching him avoid my eyes. After 37 years with Hartwell Industries, I knew every crack in that desk, every scratch that told a story. But I'd never seen Marcus look at me like this before, like I was already a ghost. "Robert," he said, his voice tight and rehearsed, "we need to talk about your future here." The word future hung in the air like a lie. I was 62 years old. I'd built half the systems this company ran on. I'd trained Marcus himself when he was a nervous kid fresh out of business school, and now he couldn't even look me in the eye. "We're restructuring," he continued, shuffling papers he wasn't reading. "The board wants to bring in younger talent, fresh perspectives, digital natives who can take us into the next decade. You're from a different era, Robert." "I'm too old," I said flatly. "That's what you mean." He didn't deny it. What happened next changed everything. If you've ever been made to feel invisible because of your age, if you've ever been pushed aside for someone younger and cheaper, this story is for you. I'm so glad you're here. Please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story travels. Because what I did next, what happened in the 6 weeks after that meeting, it's something they never saw coming. Marcus slid a manila envelope across the desk. Inside was my termination letter, dressed up in corporate language. Voluntary early retirement package, generous severance, transition period, all of it meant the same thing. "You're done. You have 2 weeks, Marcus said. 37 years, and you're giving me 2 weeks, I repeated, the words tasting like ash. The chair creaked beneath me as I stood up, the sound like a scream. I walked to the door, then turned back. Marcus was already looking at his phone, already moving on. "You're making a mistake," I said quietly. "We'll manage," he replied without looking up. I walked out of that office, past the cubicles I'd designed, past the server room I'd built from scratch, past the young faces that didn't even glance up. 37 years, and I was already forgotten. But as I drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, one thought kept circling through my mind. They have no idea what they've just done. I'd built half the systems this company ran on, and now he couldn't even look me in the eye. I sat in the cold leather chair across from Marcus Webb's oversized mahogany desk, watching him avoid my eyes. After 37 years with Hartwell Industries, I knew every crack in that desk, every scratch that told a story. But I'd never seen Marcus look at me like this before, like I was already a ghost. "Robert," he said, his voice tight and rehearsed, "we need to talk about your future here." The word future hung in the air like a lie. I was 62 years old. I'd built half the systems this company ran on. I'd trained Marcus himself when he was a nervous kid fresh out of business school, and now he couldn't even look me in the eye. "We're restructuring," he continued, shuffling papers he wasn't reading. "The board wants to bring in younger talent, fresh perspectives, digital natives who can take us into the next decade. You're from a different era, Robert." "I'm too old," I said flatly. "That's what you mean." He didn't deny it. What happened next changed everything. If you've ever been made to feel invisible because of your age, if you've ever been pushed aside for someone younger and cheaper, this story is for you. I'm so glad you're here. Please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story travels. Because what I did next, what happened in the 6 weeks after that meeting, it's something they never saw coming. Marcus slid a manila envelope across the desk. Inside was my termination letter, dressed up in corporate language. Voluntary early retirement package, generous severance, transition period. All of it meant the same thing. "You're done. You have 2 weeks, Marcus said. 37 years, and you're giving me 2 weeks? I repeated, the words tasting like ash. The chair creaked beneath me as I stood up, the sound like a scream. I walked to the door, then turned back. Marcus was already looking at his phone, already moving on. "You're making a mistake," I said quietly. "We'll manage," he replied without looking up. I walked out of that office, past the cubicles I'd designed, past the server room I'd built from scratch, past the young faces that didn't even glance up. 37 years, and I was already forgotten. But as I drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, one thought kept circling through my mind. They have no idea what they've just done. I sat in the cold leather chair across from Marcus Webb's oversized mahogany desk, watching him avoid my eyes. After 37 years with Hartwell Industries, I knew every crack in that desk, every scratch that told a story. But I'd never seen Marcus look at me like this before, like I was already a ghost. "Robert," he said, his voice tight and rehearsed, "we need to talk about your future here." The word future hung in the air like a lie. I was 62 years old. I'd built half the systems this company ran on. I'd trained Marcus himself when he was a nervous kid, fresh out of business school, and now he couldn't even look me in the eye. "We're restructuring," he continued, shuffling papers he wasn't reading. "The board wants to bring in younger talent, fresh perspectives, digital natives who can take us into the next decade. You're from a different era, Robert." "I'm too old," I said flatly. "That's what you mean." He didn't deny it. What happened next changed everything. If you've ever been made to feel invisible because of your age, if you've ever been pushed aside for someone younger and cheaper, this story is for you. I'm so glad you're here. Please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story travels, because what I did next, what happened in the 6 weeks after that meeting, it's something they never saw coming. Marcus slid a manila envelope across the desk. Inside was my termination letter, dressed up in corporate language: voluntary early retirement package, generous severance, transition period. All of it meant the same thing: you're done. "You have 2 weeks, Marcus said. 37 years, and you're giving me 2 weeks, I repeated, the words tasting like ash. The chair creaked beneath me as I stood up, the sound like a scream. I walked to the door, then turned back. Marcus was already looking at his phone, already moving on. "You're making a mistake," I said quietly. "We'll manage," he replied without looking up. I walked out of that office, past the cubicles I'd designed, past the server room I'd built from scratch, past the young faces that didn't even glance up. 37 years, and I was already forgotten. But as I drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, one thought kept circling through my mind. They have no idea what they've just done. 2 weeks, I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. 37 years, and you're giving me 2 weeks? The severance package is very competitive, Robert, Marcus said, his voice taking on a defensive edge. 6 months salary, full benefits through the end of the year, and we're offering outplacement services to help you find your next opportunity. Next opportunity, at 62 in an industry that worshipped youth and treated anyone over 50 like a relic. I almost laughed. The outplacement services were a joke, a box to check so the company could say they'd tried to help. I'd seen how those services worked. They'd give me access to a job board full of positions I was overqualified for and wouldn't get anyway because the moment they saw my graduation date on my resume, I'd be filtered out by some algorithm designed by a 25-year-old who thought anyone over 40 was ancient. I stood up slowly, deliberately. The chair scraped against the floor with a sound like a scream, like a protest, like the cry I was holding inside. "I don't want your severance package, Marcus," I said quietly. "I want to know who made this decision. I want to know which board member decided that 37 years of service, 17 patents, and millions in revenue generated meant less than the optics of having a younger leadership team." For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Fear, no satisfaction. He was enjoying this, I realized. Not the discomfort of firing me, but the power of it. The power of being the one who got to stay while I was forced out. "The board voted unanimously," he said, and there was a note of finality in his voice. "This comes from the top, Robert. It's not personal, it's business. It's what's best for the company. Not personal." The most personal thing that had ever happened to me, and it wasn't personal. I walked to the door, my legs feeling strangely disconnected from my body, like I was watching myself from a distance. My hand touched the doorknob, cold metal that had been touched by thousands of hands over the years, including mine, thousands of times. I turned back. Marcus was already looking at his phone, already moving on to his next task, his next meeting, his next victim. The afternoon light still created that halo effect around him, but now he just looked small, diminished. A man playing at power in a game he didn't fully understand. "You're making a mistake," I said quietly. The words came out with more certainty than I felt. "You have no idea what you're doing." "We'll manage," he said without looking up. His fingers moved across his phone screen, typing something, probably already forgetting I was there. We always do. I walked out of that office for what I thought would be the last time. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded like a period at the end of a sentence. The end of a chapter. The end of a story. I walked past the cubicles I'd designed during the office renovation in 2015, past the server room I'd built from scratch in 2008, past the conference rooms where I'd presented strategies that shaped the company's direction, past the break room where I'd celebrated birthdays and promotions and victories with colleagues who were now carefully not making eye contact. The young faces didn't even glance up from their screens. They were absorbed in their work, in their futures, in their certainty that they were invincible and irreplaceable. They had no idea that one day they'd be sitting in that cold leather chair, listening to someone younger tell them they were from a different era. 37 years, and I was already forgotten, already erased, already a ghost. The elevator ride down felt like descending into a grave. 43 floors. I watched the numbers decrease, each one a year of my life spent in this building. 43, 42, 41. I remembered when this building was new, when I'd helped plan the technology infrastructure, when I'd argued with architects about cable routing and server room placement and backup power systems. I'd won most of those arguments. The building worked because I'd made it work. 37, 36. I remembered the faces of people I'd mentored, people who'd gone on to successful careers, people who probably didn't remember my name now. 23, 22, 21. I remembered my 40th birthday party in the break room, my 50th, my 60th. I remembered Catherine bringing a cake, back when spouses were still invited to office celebrations, back before everything became so corporate and sterile and afraid of lawsuits. 10, 9, 8. I remembered the first time I'd ridden this elevator, 37 years ago, nervous and excited and full of ambition. I'd been 25 years old, fresh from graduate school, ready to change the world. I'd been wearing a suit that was slightly too big, carrying a briefcase my father had given me as a graduation present. Ground floor. The doors opened. I stepped out into the lobby, marble floors that I'd walked across thousands of times, and headed toward the parking garage. My car was on level 3, space 214, the same space I'd parked in for the last 12 years. Some things stayed constant, even when everything else fell apart. The drive home was a blur. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The afternoon traffic moved around me in waves of metal and glass and exhaust. I drove on autopilot, muscle memory taking me through familiar streets while my mind spun in circles. They have no idea what they've just done, I thought as I merged onto the highway. They have no idea what they're losing. But even as I thought it, I knew it wasn't true. They knew exactly what they were losing, they just didn't care. Or worse, they thought it was worth it. They thought that whatever they'd gain from bringing in younger, cheaper talent would outweigh what they'd lose when I walked out the door. They were wrong, but they wouldn't realize it until it was too late. The house was quiet when I got home. Our house. The house Catherine and I had bought 30 years ago, when our kids were small and our future seemed limitless. The house we'd raised our family in, the house where we'd celebrated and mourned and lived our lives. I pulled into the driveway and sat in the car for a long moment, engine off, just staring at the front door. I didn't want to go inside. I didn't want to tell Catherine what had happened. I didn't want to see the worry in her eyes, the fear about our future, the questions about what we'd do now. But I couldn't sit in the car forever. Eventually I had to face it. I had to face her. I had to face the reality of what my life had become in the space of a 15-minute meeting. The front door opened before I reached it. Catherine stood there, backlit by the warm light from inside, and I could see from her expression that she already knew something was wrong. She'd always been able to read me like that, even after 38 years of marriage. Especially after 38 years of marriage. "You're home early," she said, and it wasn't a question. It was an observation. A statement of fact that carried within it 1,000 unspoken questions. What happened? Are you okay? Should I be worried? I stepped inside and set my briefcase down carefully, precisely, in its usual spot by the door. Control. I'd always prided myself on control. On staying calm in crisis, on being the steady hand when everything around me was chaos. "They let me go," I said. The words came out flat, emotionless, like I was reporting on someone else's life. "Marcus called me in this afternoon, said they're restructuring, bringing in younger people, digital natives who understand the new technologies better than someone from my generation possibly could." Catherine's hand flew to her mouth, a gesture of shock that would have been theatrical if it wasn't so genuine. We'd been married for 38 years. She knew what Hartwell Industries meant to me. It wasn't just a job, it was my identity, my purpose, my proof that I mattered in the world. "They can't do that," she whispered, but we both knew they could. They could do whatever they wanted. Employment at will. That's what my contract said. That's what every contract said. They could fire me for any reason, or no reason at all, as long as they were careful not to explicitly say it was because of my age. And they'd been very careful. "They can do whatever they want, Cat," I said, and I heard the bitterness in my own voice, and they did. She crossed the kitchen and wrapped her arms around me. I stood there, rigid, unable to return the embrace. If I let myself feel it, really feel it, I'd break, and I couldn't afford to break. Not yet. Not when I needed to figure out what came next. Not when I needed to be strong for both of us. "What are we going to do?" she asked, her voice muffled against my shoulder. It was the question I'd been asking myself for the last hour, the question I didn't have an answer to. What does a 62-year-old engineer do when the industry he's devoted his life to decides he's obsolete? I don't know, I admitted, pulling back to look into her eyes. Beautiful eyes, still bright and clear after all these years. Eyes that had watched me build a career, raise 2 kids, become someone who mattered. But I'll figure something out. I always do. That night, sleep was impossible. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, watching the shadows from the streetlight outside, paint patterns on the plaster, the same patterns I'd watched for 30 years, the same shadows that had kept me company during other sleepless nights. Nights when I was worried about a project deadline, or a difficult client, or a technical problem that seemed unsolvable. But those nights had been different. Those nights I'd been worried about succeeding. Tonight, I was mourning a failure I hadn't seen coming. Catherine's breathing was soft and steady beside me, but I knew she wasn't really asleep either. I could feel the tension in her body, the way she was holding herself too still, the way her breathing was just slightly too regular. We were both pretending, both trying to give the other space to process what had happened. After 38 years of marriage, we were good at that kind of pretending. My mind kept replaying the meeting. Marcus's face, the manila envelope, the casual cruelty of 2 weeks. But something else kept nagging at me, something Marcus had said that didn't quite fit. This comes from the top. The board voted unanimously. I'd known most of those board members for years. I'd worked with them, presented to them, saved their asses more times than I could count. Gerald Hutchinson, who'd been on the board for 15 years. I'd personally rescued a major client relationship for him back in 2018. When his division had screwed up an implementation. Margaret Chen, who'd joined the board in 2020, I'd helped her son get an internship at a tech company when he was struggling to find opportunities. David Kowalski, the CFO, who'd relied on my cost projections and efficiency analyses for every major financial decision for the past decade. And they'd voted me out without even a phone call. Without even the courtesy of a conversation. Without even a thank you for 37 years of service. Why? At 2 in the morning, I gave up on sleep. I got out of bed carefully, trying not to wake Catherine, and went downstairs to my study. The room was lined with bookshelves, floor to ceiling, filled with technical manuals and industry journals and textbooks that chronicled the evolution of technology over 4 decades. Proof that I'd kept learning, kept adapting, kept staying relevant even as the industry changed around me. My desk sat in front of the window, the same desk I'd had since we moved into this house. Solid oak, built to last, covered with the accumulated debris of a working life. Framed photos of Catherine and the kids, a coffee mug that said World's Best Dad, a Father's Day gift from 15 years ago, a small trophy from a company innovation competition I'd won in 2012. Proof that I'd mattered, that I'd built something. I sat down and opened my laptop. The blue light illuminated my face in the darkness as I logged into my personal email account. Not the company one they'd probably already deactivated. Not the account where I'd sent and received hundreds of thousands of messages over the years. My personal account, the one I barely used, the one that was truly mine. I had to know. I had to understand why. I started with LinkedIn, that digital resume that everyone in the industry maintained like a shrine to their professional accomplishments. I searched for Hartwell Industries and looked at recent hires, recent changes, recent announcements. And there it was, posted 3 weeks ago. Hartwell Industries welcomes Jason Chen as new Chief Technology Officer. The announcement was dated 3 weeks before they'd fired me. 3 weeks they'd already hired my replacement before they'd even told me I was being replaced. Before they'd even had the decency to give me notice. They'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months, and I'd had no idea. I clicked on Jason Chen's profile, feeling my blood pressure rise with each detail I read. 29 years old. Stanford MBA, class of 2020. 5 years of experience. All of it at a tech startup called Velocity Systems that had burned through $50 million in venture capital before going bankrupt in 2023. His profile picture showed a kid in a hoodie and designer glasses, grinning at the camera like the world owed him something. Like success was his birthright. Like experience and knowledge and decades of hard-won expertise meant nothing compared to youth and confidence and a prestigious degree. This was the digital native who was supposed to replace me. This kid who'd spent 5 years at a failed startup, who'd never built anything that lasted, who'd never had to maintain legacy systems or deal with technical debt, or solve problems that didn't have easy answers. This was who the board thought could do my job better than I could. I dug deeper, clicking through his work history, his recommendations, his posts. He wrote a lot about disruption and innovation and moving fast and breaking things. All the Silicon Valley buzzwords that sounded impressive but meant nothing. He had no patents, no major projects that he'd led from conception to completion, no evidence that he'd ever built anything more complex than a prototype or a proof of concept. But he was 29, and that apparently mattered more than anything else. I looked at the board members' recent activity, scrolling through their posts and updates and announcements, and that's when I saw it. A pattern I'd missed before. 3 months ago, Hartwell Industries had received a takeover offer. I remembered it vaguely. There had been some buzz around the office, some speculation about what it might mean, but then the board had rejected it publicly and everyone had moved on. The offer had come from Meridian Capital, a venture capital firm with a reputation for buying struggling companies, stripping them for parts, and selling off the pieces. The board had rejected the offer publicly, issuing a statement about how it wasn't in the best interests of shareholders, how Hartwell Industries had a bright future ahead, how they were committed to building long-term value rather than accepting a quick payout. All the right words, all the things boards are supposed to say when they're rejecting a takeover bid, but something about it nagged at me. I opened a new browser tab and navigated to the SEC website, the repository of all public company filings. If you knew where to look, if you understood the language of corporate finance, you could find almost anything, and I'd spent enough time working with the finance team over the years to know where to look. I found the form for filings, the documents that disclosed insider trading by company officers and board members, and there it was. 2 weeks after the Meridian Capital offer was rejected, 3 board members had sold significant portions of their stock. Gerald Hutchinson had sold 40,000 shares. Margaret Chen had sold 35,000 shares. David Kowalski had sold 50,000 shares. All of them sold at a premium to the market price. All of them sold to the same buyer, listed only as an LLC, a shell company. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. This wasn't normal. Board members selling stock right after rejecting a takeover offer, selling at a premium to an anonymous buyer. This was something else. This was suspicious. This was potentially illegal. I opened another tab and started searching for more information about the LLC that had bought the stock. It took me an hour of digging through corporate registries and business filings, but I finally found it. The LLC was registered in Delaware, the corporate haven where companies went to hide their ownership structures, but buried in the paperwork was a name I recognized. A lawyer who worked for Apex Technologies. Apex Technologies. I knew that name. They were a mid-sized tech company, publicly traded, with a reputation for acquiring smaller companies and integrating them into their portfolio. My engineering mind started connecting the dots, seeing patterns in the chaos, building a structure from fragments of information. The sudden push to modernize, the hire of an inexperienced CTO with a Stanford pedigree and Silicon Valley buzzwords, the purge of senior employees like me, people who knew how the company really worked, people who'd ask questions, people who'd see what was coming. They weren't restructuring. They were preparing for a sale. They'd rejected Meridian Capital's offer publicly, but they were preparing to sell to someone else, to Apex Technologies, and they needed to make the company look attractive to a buyer. They needed to show that they were innovative, forward-thinking, ready for the future. They needed to get rid of the old guard, the expensive senior employees with their institutional knowledge and their inconvenient memories and their tendency to question decisions that didn't make sense. People like me. I opened a new document and started taking notes, organizing my thoughts, building a timeline. 3 months ago, Meridian Capital makes a takeover offer. The board rejects it publicly. 2 weeks later, 3 board members sell stock at a premium to a shell company connected to Apex Technologies. 6 weeks ago, the board starts pushing for modernization and restructuring. 3 weeks ago, they hired Jason Chen as the new CTO. 2 weeks ago, they start forcing out senior employees. Today, they fire me. It was a pattern, a plan, a conspiracy, if I wanted to use that word. And the more I thought about it, the more certain I became. They were going to sell the company to Apex Technologies. They were going to make it look like a strategic merger, a combination of complementary strengths, a win-win for both companies. And the board members who'd orchestrated it were going to walk away with golden parachutes and stock options and consulting contracts that would set them up for life. But there was something else, something that bothered me even more than the personal betrayal. If they were preparing to sell the company, if they were making it look more attractive than it really was, what else were they hiding? What other numbers were they manipulating? What other truths were they concealing? I'd spent enough time working with the finance team to know that companies could hide a lot if they were clever about it. Revenue recognition could be accelerated. Expenses could be deferred. Liabilities could be moved to subsidiary companies. Projections could be inflated. And if they were willing to fire loyal employees to make the company look younger and more innovative, what else were they willing to do? I opened a secure folder on my laptop, a folder I'd created years ago for backup files and system documentation. Files I'd kept over the years because some paranoid part of me had always known they might be useful someday. Backup codes for systems I'd built, architecture diagrams for infrastructure I'd designed, access credentials I'd never deleted, never handed over, because I was the one who'd created them, and I was the only one who really understood how everything worked. I was about to do something I'd never done before, something that could get me in serious trouble, something that was probably illegal, or at least ethically questionable. But they'd fired me. They'd thrown me away like garbage after 37 years of loyalty. They'd decided I was obsolete, irrelevant, from a different era. And if they were planning what I thought they were planning, if they were committing fraud to make a sale happen, then I had a responsibility to stop them. Not for revenge, not for payback, but because it was the right thing to do. Because somewhere in the decades, I'd spent building systems and solving problems and doing the right thing even when it was hard. I had developed a sense of ethics that wouldn't let me walk away. I started typing, my fingers moving across the keyboard with the muscle memory of 4 decades. Over the next 3 days, I became a man obsessed. Catherine would find me in my study at 3 in the morning, surrounded by printouts and spreadsheets and sticky notes covered in my cramped handwriting. The desk was buried under paper, the floor littered with coffee cups and the remains of meals I'd eaten without tasting. My eyes were red from staring at screens. My back ached from sitting in the same position for hours, but I couldn't stop. I had to understand. I had to see the whole picture. "Robert, you need to sleep," Catherine would say, standing in the doorway in her bathrobe, her face creased with worry. "You need to eat something real. You need to take care of yourself." "I need to understand," I'd reply, not looking away from the screen. "I need to know what they're doing." And slowly, piece by piece, I did. Hartwell Industries was in trouble. Real trouble. The kind that doesn't show up in quarterly reports until it's too late. The kind that's hidden in footnotes and subsidiary financials and carefully worded projections. The kind that board members know about but shareholders don't. Marcus and the board had made a series of catastrophic decisions over the past 2 years. They'd acquired a smaller competitor in 2023, paying a premium price for a company that turned out to have far more problems than the due diligence had revealed. They'd launched a new product line in early 2024 that had failed spectacularly, burning through development, budget, and producing something the market didn't want. They'd signed contracts with major clients that looked impressive on paper but were actually bleeding money, because the pricing had been too aggressive and the delivery costs were higher than projected. And they'd hidden it all. They'd moved the acquisition costs into a subsidiary. They'd capitalized the development expenses instead of expensing them. They'd recognized revenue from the unprofitable contracts up front while deferring the costs. They'd done everything they could to make the quarterly numbers look good while the underlying business deteriorated. I found it all in the files I'd kept, in the backup systems I'd maintained. In the access, I still had 2 servers that IT hadn't thought to lock me out of yet. I found emails between board members discussing how to present the numbers. I found spreadsheets showing the real financials versus the reported financials. I found presentations to the board that painted a very different picture than the presentations to shareholders. And I found evidence that Meridian Capital had noticed. The takeover bid hadn't been hostile. It had been a lifeline. Meridian had done their homework. They'd seen through the accounting tricks and the optimistic projections. They'd known the company was in trouble, and they'd offered to buy it anyway, at a price that would have let the board members save face and the shareholders get a decent return. But accepting that offer would have meant admitting failure. It would have meant the board members losing their cushy positions, their stock options, their executive bonuses. It would have meant investigations into how the company had gotten into such trouble in the first place. It would have meant accountability, so they'd rejected it. And they'd come up with a different plan. They'd make the company look innovative and forward-thinking. They'd bring in young talent with impressive credentials. They'd talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning and digital transformation. They'd create the appearance of a company positioned for growth. And then they'd sell it to someone else, someone who didn't know the real situation, someone who'd pay more than Meridian had offered, someone like Apex Technologies. Apex was a good company. I'd followed them for years. They were well-managed, profitable, growing steadily. They had a reputation for smart acquisitions and successful integration. They were exactly the kind of company that would be interested in Hartwell Industries if they thought they were buying a healthy business with growth potential. But they weren't buying a healthy business. They were buying a house of cards that would collapse the moment they looked too closely. And when it did collapse, when the truth came out, Apex would be destroyed. Their stock would tank. Their reputation would be ruined. Their shareholders would sue. And the people who'd actually built Hartwell Industries, the employees who'd devoted years of their lives to the company, would lose everything. Their jobs, their pensions, their futures, all so that Marcus and the board could walk away with their golden parachutes and their stock options and their consulting contracts. On the fourth day, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mr. Hartwell," a woman's voice said. Young, nervous, scared. "This is Sarah Chen. I used to work in accounting at Hartwell Industries. I was let go 2 weeks ago. They said it was performance issues, but I know that's not true. Mr. Hartwell, I found something. Something wrong with the books, and when I tried to report it to my supervisor, when I tried to do the right thing, they fired me. They made me sign an NDA. They threatened me with legal action if I talked to anyone. But I can't just walk away. I can't let them get away with this. I need your help." We met at a coffee shop downtown, a generic chain place where nobody would recognize us or care what we were talking about. Sarah was young, maybe 30, with dark circles under her eyes and hands that shook when she opened her laptop. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She looked like I felt, "I shouldn't be showing you this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I signed an NDA. If they find out I'm talking to you, they'll sue me. They'll destroy me. But what they're doing? It's not right. It's not legal. Someone has to stop them." She turned the screen toward me, and I saw spreadsheets, financial statements, the kind of documents I'd been looking at for days. But these were different. These were the real numbers. The numbers that didn't get reported to shareholders. Hartwell Industries was cooking the books. Not in an obvious way. These people were smart. They'd hired expensive accountants and lawyers who knew exactly how far they could push the rules without technically breaking them. But they were inflating revenue projections, hiding liabilities in subsidiary companies, recognizing income before it was earned, deferring expenses that should have been recognized immediately. And most damning of all, they were preparing to sell the company based on fraudulent financial data. "They're going to sell to Apex Technologies," Sarah whispered, glancing around the coffee shop like she expected corporate security to burst through the door at any moment. "The deal is supposed to close in 6 weeks. Apex thinks they're buying a healthy company with strong growth potential. They have no idea. They have no idea that half the revenue projections are based on contracts that will never be profitable. They have no idea that the new product line is a disaster. They have no idea that the acquisition from last year is bleeding money. They're going to pay a premium price for a company that's worth half what the financials say it is." I stared at the numbers, my mind racing. This was worse than I'd thought. This wasn't just aggressive accounting or optimistic projections. This was fraud. Securities fraud. The kind that sent people to prison. Apex Technologies was a good company. They employed 15,000 people. They had shareholders who trusted management to make smart decisions. They had a reputation built over decades. And they were about to be destroyed by this acquisition. When the truth came out, and it would come out eventually, Apex would be devastated. Their stock would crash. Their credit rating would be downgraded. They'd face lawsuits from shareholders. They might not survive. And the board members at Hartwell, they'd walk away with millions. Marcus would get his golden parachute. Jason Chen would probably get a nice severance package when Apex realized they'd been conned. Everyone would win except the people who actually mattered. The employees, the shareholders, the people who'd built both companies with their work and their dedication. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked Sarah. "Why me?" She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much, too soon. Eyes that had lost their innocence somewhere in the accounting department of a corrupt company. "Because you're Robert Hartwell," she said simply. "Everyone knows you. Everyone knows what you built. Everyone knows you're the one person who might be able to stop this. You have the credibility, you have the connection, you have the knowledge. If anyone can do something, it's you." I closed the laptop carefully, my hands steadier than I expected. "I'm not a Hartwell," I said. "No relation to the founders, just an engineer who worked there a long time. Just someone they decided was obsolete." "Then be the engineer who saves it," she said. "Be the person who stops them from destroying 2 companies and ruining thousands of lives just so a few board members can get rich." That night, I told Catherine everything. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd celebrated promotions and birthdays, and our kids' graduations. The same table where we'd planned our retirement, back when retirement seemed like something distant and comfortable and earned. The same table where we'd shared 30 years of meals and conversations and life. "They're committing fraud," I said, laying out the evidence. Securities fraud. If this deal goes through, Apex will lose everything. And when it all comes out, and it will come out eventually, Hartwell Industries will be destroyed. Everyone who still works there will lose their jobs, their pensions, everything. And Marcus and the board will be on a beach somewhere, spending their millions. Catherine was quiet for a long moment, processing what I'd told her. She'd always been the practical one, the one who thought through consequences, the one who kept me grounded when I got too caught up in principles and ideals. "What are you going to do?" she finally asked. It was the question I'd been wrestling with for days, the question that had kept me up at night, the question that had no easy answer. "I don't know," I admitted. "I could go to the SEC, report them, file a whistleblower complaint, but that takes time. Investigations, hearings, legal processes. The deal could close before anyone acts. And even if they do investigate, even if they find evidence of fraud, the damage will already be done. Apex will have bought the company. Thousands of people will have lost their jobs. The board members will have their money. Justice delayed is justice denied." "What else?" Catherine asked. She knew me well enough to know I'd already thought through multiple scenarios, already wargamed different approaches, already considered and rejected a dozen plans. "There's another option," I said slowly, "but it's risky, and it would take everything we have, every penny we've saved, every investment we've made, our entire retirement fund, everything we've built over 38 years of marriage." "Tell me," she said, reaching across the table to take my hand. Her grip was firm, steady, the same grip that had held me together through every crisis we'd faced in nearly 4 decades together. "I could buy it," I said. The words sounded insane even as I spoke them. "Buy Hartwell Industries. Before Apex does. Make a better offer. A competing bid. And then, once I own it, I can fix it. I can clean house. I can get rid of the board members who are committing fraud. I can bring in honest leadership. I can save the company and save Apex from making a catastrophic mistake." Catherine's eyes widened. "Robert, we don't have that kind of money. Hartwell Industries is worth hundreds of millions. We have what? 3 million in retirement savings? That's not even close." "Not alone," I agreed. "But I know people, investors I've worked with over the years, people who trust me, people who've made money on my recommendations before. David Reeves, who I helped with that semiconductor deal in 2019. Patricia Morrison, who I advised on her tech portfolio. James Chen, who owes me for saving his company's infrastructure project in 2021, and I have something Apex doesn't have." "What's that?" Catherine asked. "I know exactly what Hartwell Industries is really worth," I said, feeling a spark of excitement for the first time in days. "I know which divisions are profitable and which are bleeding money. I know which contracts are solid and which are garbage. I know which systems work and which are held together with duct tape and prayers. I built those systems. I know where every dollar goes. I know what the company is worth without the accounting tricks and the inflated projections. And I know it's worth more than what Apex is offering, if it's run correctly, if the fraud is cleaned up, if honest people are in charge. I can make a better offer, a smarter offer, an offer based on the real value of the company, not the fictional value the board is presenting. And I can do it in a way that saves the company, saves the jobs, saves Apex from disaster, and makes sure Marcus and his board cronies don't get away with this." I leaned forward, feeling something I hadn't felt in days. Hope, purpose, the sense that maybe, just maybe, I could turn this disaster into something meaningful. "I can make a better offer," I repeated. "I can structure it so that the current board is replaced immediately, so that Marcus is terminated without his golden parachute, so that there's a full forensic audit of the company's finances. I can make it a condition of the sale that the fraud is investigated and the people responsible are held accountable." Catherine studied my face for a long moment. I could see her doing the math, calculating the risks, weighing the potential outcomes. She'd always been better at that than me. I was the dreamer, the idealist, the one who believed in doing the right thing even when it was hard. She was the realist, the one who made sure we could afford my principles. "How much do we need?" she finally asked. I pulled out my laptop and showed her the spreadsheet I'd been working on. Numbers and projections and scenarios. Conservative estimates and optimistic projections and everything in between. "Apex is offering $44 per share," I explained. "There are 10 million shares outstanding. That's $440 million. To beat their offer, I need to go to at least $47 per share. That's $470 million. I have 3 million, I need 467 million more." Catherine's face went pale. "Robert, that's impossible. How could you possibly raise that much money?" Before I tell you how I did it, I need to ask you something. Are you still with me? Are you invested in this story? If you are, please take a second right now to hit that like button. It helps more people find this story. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to risk everything for what you believed in? I want to hear your stories. Now, back to the most important negotiation of my life. I've been making calls, I said to Catherine. Quiet calls, feeling people out. David Reeves is interested. He could put in 50 million. Patricia Morrison could do 30 million. James Chen could do 20 million. I have a list of 15 investors who've worked with me before, who trust my judgment, who've made money on my advice. If I can get each of them to commit 20 to 50 million, I can get close. And then I can go to a bank for the rest. A bridge loan, secured by the company's assets. It's risky, Catherine said. It's insane. If this goes wrong, we lose everything. Not just our retirement, everything. We could end up bankrupt. We could lose the house. We could lose everything we've built. I know, I said quietly. I know the risks. But if I don't do this, if I just walk away and let it happen, Apex will be destroyed. Thousands of people will lose their jobs. And Marcus and the board will get away with fraud. They'll get rich while everyone else suffers. I can't let that happen. I can't just walk away. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. It was a small smile, tentative, but it was there. How much do you need from our savings? She asked. All of it, I admitted. Every penny. And we'd need to take out a second mortgage on the house. And we'd need to liquidate our investment accounts. And we'd probably need to borrow against my pension. We'd be betting everything on this working. The next morning, I started making calls. Real calls this time. Not feeling people out, but making actual pitches. Asking for actual commitments. Putting together an actual investor group. The first call was to David Reeves. We'd known each other for 20 years. Ever since we'd worked together on a joint project between our companies, he'd made a fortune in semiconductors and retired at 50, but he still invested actively, and he still trusted my judgment. David, I said when he answered, I need your help, and I need you to trust me. I've got a deal that's either brilliant or insane, and I'm not entirely sure which. He laughed. That's the best kind of deal. Robert, tell me more. I laid it out for him. The fraud at Hartwell. The planned sale to Apex. My plan to make a competing bid, the amount of money I needed, the risks involved, the potential returns if it worked. I talked for 30 minutes straight, walking him through every detail, every number, every assumption. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard, David finally said. You're going to try to buy the company that just fired you. You're going to bet your entire retirement on stopping a fraud that nobody else even knows about. You're going to go up against a board of directors and a management team that has every incentive to fight you. You're going to risk everything on a hostile takeover that might not even work. Yes, I said simply. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Another long silence. How much do you need from me? David asked. 50 million, I said. I need you to commit $50 million to this deal. If it works, you'll make a significant return. If it doesn't, you'll lose everything. I won't lie to you about the risks. This is as risky as it gets. I'll do it, David said without hesitation. Not because I think it's a good investment, though it might be, but because I've known you for 20 years, and I've never seen you be wrong about something you were this certain about. If you say this is the right thing to do, I believe you. Send me the paperwork. Over the next 2 weeks, I assembled a team. David brought in 3 other investors from his network. Patricia Morrison committed 30 million and brought in 2 more investors. James Chen committed 20 million and connected me with a venture capital firm that specialized in corporate turnarounds. One by one, the pieces fell into place. 50 million here, 30 million there, 20 million from someone else. Each commitment brought me closer to the total I needed. Each conversation was the same. I'd explain the situation. I'd show them the evidence of fraud. I'd walk them through my plan, and I'd be completely honest about the risks. Some people said no. Some people thought I was crazy. Some people wished me luck but didn't want to risk their money on something this uncertain. But enough people said yes. Enough people trusted me. Enough people believed that stopping fraud and saving a company was worth the risk. I brought in Sarah Chen, who knew the financials inside and out. She was risking everything by helping me. Her NDA, her career, possibly jail time if things went wrong. But she believed in what we were doing. She believed that stopping the fraud was more important than protecting herself. I brought in Tom Bradshaw, a lawyer I'd worked with on patent cases over the years. He was old school, the kind of attorney who still believed in right and wrong, who still thought the law should be about justice and not just about winning. Tom, I need you to help me structure a hostile takeover. I told him, I need you to help me buy a company that doesn't want to be bought by me. I need you to help me force out a board of directors that's committing fraud. And I need you to do it in a way that's completely legal and completely bulletproof. This is going to be complicated, Tom warned. Hostile takeovers are tricky. There are a lot of ways for a board to fight back. Poison pills, white knights, litigation. They're going to throw everything they have at you. And if they're really committing fraud, they'll fight dirty. Let them fight, I said. I've got 37 years of ammunition. We structured the deal carefully. My investor group would offer $47 per share, $3 more than Apex's offer of $44. But there were conditions. Conditions that would make it very clear this wasn't just about money, it was about accountability. The current board would be replaced immediately upon closing. Every single member? Marcus Webb would be terminated as CEO without his golden parachute, without his severance package, without any of the benefits he'd negotiated for himself. There would be a full forensic audit of the company's finances, conducted by an independent accounting firm, with the results made public. Any evidence of fraud would be referred to the appropriate authorities. The senior management team would be reviewed, and anyone who'd participated in the fraud would be terminated and potentially prosecuted. It was a hostile offer in every sense of the word. We weren't just trying to buy the company, we were trying to clean house. We were trying to hold people accountable. We were trying to do the right thing, even if it meant burning bridges and making enemies. Tom filed the paperwork on a Friday afternoon. A Schedule 1-3D with the SEC announcing our intention to acquire Hartwell Industries. A letter to the board of directors outlining our offer and our conditions. A press release, making the whole thing public. By Monday morning, all hell had broken loose. My phone rang at 6:47 a.m. I was already awake, had been awake since 4, unable to sleep, waiting for the reaction I knew was coming. The caller ID showed Marcus Webb's cell phone. I let it ring 3 times before answering, taking a small petty pleasure in making him wait. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he shouted. No greeting, no pleasantries, just raw anger and panic. "You can't do this. You can't just waltz in and try to buy the company. You don't have the money. You're bluffing. This is some kind of revenge fantasy." "Making a better offer," I said calmly. "Isn't that how capitalism works? The board has a fiduciary duty to consider all offers. And my offer is better than Apex's $3 per share better. That's $30 million more for the shareholders. How can you justify rejecting it?" "You can't afford this," Marcus said. I could hear the desperation in his voice. "You're bluffing. You're trying to drive up the price for Apex. You're trying to sabotage the deal. This is interference. This is tortious interference with a business relationship. We'll sue you. We'll tie you up in court for years." "Am I bluffing?" I asked. "Check the filing." "Marcus, the money's real. The investors are real. The bank commitment letter is real. We have the financing in place. We can close this deal faster than Apex can. And unlike Apex, we know exactly what we're buying. We know about the accounting irregularities. We know about the hidden liabilities. We know about the unprofitable contracts. We know everything." I heard him suck in a breath. "You have no proof of any irregularities," he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "You're making accusations you can't back up. This is slander. This is defamation. We'll sue you for that too." "Don't I have proof?" I asked. "Sarah Chen says hello, by the way. She's been very helpful. Very forthcoming about the real financials, the ones that don't get shown to shareholders, the ones that show what the company is really worth." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could almost hear Marcus's mind racing, trying to figure out how much Sarah knew, how much she'd told me, how much trouble he was in. "You're finished, Marcus," I said quietly. "You just don't know it yet. The board will never accept your offer," he said, trying to regain his composure. "We have a deal with Apex. We have a signed letter of intent. We have a fiduciary duty to complete that transaction. You're too late." "The board doesn't have a choice," I countered. "It's a better offer. If you reject it, you'll have to explain to shareholders why you turned down more money. And when those shareholders start asking questions, when they start wondering why you rejected a higher bid, when they start looking into the financials, what do you think they're going to find? What do you think happens when they discover the accounting irregularities? When they find out about the hidden liabilities? When they realize you've been lying to them?" "We'll fight this," Marcus said. "We'll fight you every step of the way. We'll use every legal tool available. We'll make this so expensive and so difficult that you'll give up. We'll destroy you." "Go ahead," I said. "But while you're fighting, I'll be talking to the SEC. I'll be talking to Apex, letting them know what they're really buying. I'll be talking to shareholders, explaining why the board is so desperate to reject a higher offer. I'll be talking to the press, telling them about the fraud. You can fight me, Marcus, but you can't fight the truth, and the truth is going to come out. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, adrenaline coursing through my system. I had just declared war on my former employer, on the board of directors, on the CEO who'd fired me. There was no going back now. The next 3 weeks were brutal. The board rejected our offer, issuing a statement claiming it was inadequately financed and not in the best interests of shareholders. We provided bank statements and commitment letters proving the financing was real. The board claimed our investor group lacked industry expertise and couldn't successfully run the company. One provided my resume, 37 years of industry expertise, 17 patents, a track record of building and maintaining the systems the company ran on. The board tried to fast-track the Apex deal, scheduling a shareholder vote for 2 weeks out. Tom got an injunction, arguing that shareholders needed more time to consider competing offers. The board leaked stories to the business press about disgruntled former employees trying to sabotage the company out of spite. We leaked the evidence of accounting irregularities to a Wall Street Journal reporter who'd been investigating corporate fraud. The board hired a white shoe law firm to fight us. We hired our own lawyers and filed a lawsuit alleging breach of fiduciary duty. It was war. Corporate war. Fought with lawyers and press releases and SEC filings instead of guns and bombs. But war nonetheless. And I was fighting for my life, for my reputation, for my sense of justice, for everything I believed in. The Wall Street Journal article came out on a Wednesday morning. The headline was devastating. Hartwell Industries faces questions about financial reporting. The article detailed the accounting irregularities Sarah had found, the revenue recognition issues, the hidden liabilities, the optimistic projections that didn't match reality. It quoted anonymous sources, which meant Sarah had talked to other people in the accounting department, people who'd seen the same things she had, people who were willing to confirm her story even if they weren't willing to go on the record. The stock price dropped 15% in the first hour of trading. Shareholders started asking questions. Institutional investors started demanding answers. The SEC announced it was opening an informal inquiry into the company's accounting practices. And Apex Technologies issued a statement saying they were reviewing the allegations and considering their options. That afternoon, I got a call from Apex's CEO, Mr. Hartwell, he said. His voice was carefully neutral, the voice of a man trying not to show how angry he was. I think we need to talk. We met at a hotel downtown, neutral territory, away from offices and lawyers and people who might overhear. He was younger than I expected, maybe 50, with the kind of polished confidence that came from years of success. He ordered coffee, I ordered water. We sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment. You've put us in a very difficult position, he finally said. We've been negotiating this acquisition for months. We've done our due diligence, we've committed resources, we've made plans. And now you're telling us the company we're buying isn't what we thought it was. I'm telling you the truth, I said. The company you're buying is worth less than you think. The financials are misleading. The board has been hiding problems. If you complete this acquisition at the price you've agreed to, you'll be overpaying by at least $100 million. And when the truth comes out, and it will come out, your shareholders will crucify you. Why should I believe you? He asked. You're making a competing bid. You have every incentive to sabotage our deal. You could be lying about all of this just to drive down the price or scare us away. Because I'm giving you the evidence, I said, sliding a folder across the table. Everything Sarah found, everything I've discovered, the real financials, the hidden liabilities, the unprofitable contracts, the accounting tricks, all of it. You can verify it yourself. You can have your own forensic accountants look at it. You can see that I'm telling the truth. He opened the folder and started reading. I watched his face change as he processed what he was seeing. The initial skepticism giving way to concern, then to anger, then to something that looked like grudging respect. This is bad, he said quietly. If this is all true, if the board has really been hiding this much, then we've been lied to. Our due diligence was based on false information. Our valuation was based on fraudulent financials. We can't complete this acquisition. We'd be buying a disaster. I know, I said. That's why I'm trying to stop it, not to hurt you, not to sabotage your company, but to save you from making a catastrophic mistake. He closed the folder and looked at me. So what do you want? He asked. You're not doing this out of the goodness of your heart. You're making your own bid. You want to buy the company yourself. What's your angle? I want to fix it, I said simply. I want to clean house. I want to get rid of the board members who committed fraud. I want to bring in honest leadership. I want to save the company and save the jobs and make sure this never happens again. And yes, I want to prove that I'm not obsolete. That experience matters. That 37 years of knowledge and expertise is worth something. He studied me for a long moment. You know this is crazy, right? He said. You're trying to buy the company that fired you. You're risking everything you have. You're going up against powerful people who will fight you with everything they've got. You could lose everything. I know, I said, but it's the right thing to do. He smiled, a small genuine smile. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the craziest. Maybe both. He stood up and extended his hand. Good luck, Mr. Hartwell. I hope you win. And for what it's worth, I'm glad someone's holding them accountable. 2 days later, Apex Technologies withdrew their offer. They issued a statement citing concerns about the accuracy of the financial information they'd been provided and announcing they were terminating the letter of intent. The stock price dropped another 10%. The board was in full panic mode. Without the Apex deal, without a buyer willing to pay a premium, the company's problems would become impossible to hide. The accounting irregularities would be investigated. The second inquiry would become a formal investigation. The truth would come out. And the board members who'd orchestrated the fraud would face consequences. They tried everything to stop us. They implemented a poison pill, a shareholder rights plan designed to make hostile takeovers prohibitively expensive. Tom challenged it in court, arguing it was being used to entrench management rather than protect shareholders. They looked for a white knight, another buyer who would pay more than we were offering and let the board keep their position. But after the Wall Street Journal article, after Apex withdrew, nobody wanted to touch Hartwell Industries without a thorough investigation. They launched a smear campaign against me, leaking stories about how I was a disgruntled former employee with a grudge, how I was unqualified to run a modern technology company, how my investor group was a collection of has-beens and dinosaurs who didn't understand the industry anymore. We countered with our own press releases, highlighting my track record, my patents, my accomplishments, the systems I'd built that the company still relied on. They threatened to sue me personally for tortious interference, for defamation, for breach of confidentiality agreements I'd supposedly signed. Tom responded with our own lawsuit, alleging fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and securities violations. It was brutal. It was exhausting. It was the most stressful thing I'd ever done. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't back down. Too much was at stake. Too many people were depending on me. Too many jobs hung in the balance. The shareholder vote was scheduled for a Thursday in late October. The board needed a majority to approve the Apex sale, but Apex had withdrawn. So now they were asking shareholders to reject our offer and give them more time to find another buyer. We needed a majority to force them to accept our offer and replace the board. It was going to be close. The institutional investors controlled about 40% of the shares. Some of them were supporting us, convinced by the evidence of fraud and the higher price we were offering. Some of them were supporting the board, either because they didn't believe the allegations or because they had relationships with the current management. The retail investors, the individual shareholders who owned smaller amounts, controlled the other 60%. They were harder to predict. Some of them would vote based on price, and our offer was higher. Some of them would vote based on trust, and the board had been lying to them. Some of them wouldn't vote at all. The night before the vote, I couldn't sleep. Again, I sat in my study, looking at the framed patents on the wall, proof of a life's work, proof that I'd mattered. Catherine found me there at 2 a.m. Whatever happens tomorrow, she said, sitting down across from me, I'm proud of you. You did the right thing. You stood up for what you believed in. You fought for justice even when it was hard. That matters, regardless of how the vote goes. We could lose everything, I said. The house, our savings, our retirement, everything we've built over 38 years. If this doesn't work, if the shareholders vote against us, we'll be bankrupt. We'll have nothing. We could, she agreed. But at least we'll lose it fighting for something that matters. At least we'll lose it trying to do the right thing. At least we'll know we didn't just walk away and let them get away with fraud. I looked at my wife, this woman who'd stood by me for 38 years, who'd believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself, who was willing to risk everything because she trusted my judgment. How did I get so lucky? I asked. She smiled. You're not lucky, you're stubborn and principled, and occasionally crazy. But I wouldn't have you any other way. The shareholder meeting was held at the Hartwell Industries headquarters, the building I'd walked out of 2 months ago as a fired employee. Today, I walked in as a potential owner. The conference room was packed. Shareholders, board members, lawyers, reporters, analysts. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. Everyone knew this was going to be contentious. Everyone knew this was going to be historic. Marcus sat at the head of the table, his face a mask of controlled fury. Jason Chen, the 29-year-old digital native who'd replaced me, sat beside him, looking confused and out of his depth. The board members flanked them, their expressions ranging from defiant to worried to resigned. I took a seat in the back with David and my other investors. Sarah was there too, pale but determined. Tom sat beside me, his briefcase full of documents and legal arguments. The meeting was called to order. The board presented their case. They talked about the Apex deal falling through due to unfounded allegations. They talked about their plans to find another buyer. They talked about how my offer was inadequate, how my investor group was unqualified, how accepting our bid would be a mistake. They used all the corporate buzzwords and all the legal arguments and all the rhetorical tricks they could muster. Then it was our turn. Tom stood up and presented our offer. Higher price, better terms, commitment to preserve jobs and maintain the company's core values, and most importantly, accountability for the fraud that had been committed. Then came the questions. A shareholder stood up, an older woman I didn't recognize. "Who are these investors?" she asked. "Why should we trust them?" David stood up. He introduced himself, explained his background, his track record, his commitment to building companies rather than stripping them. He talked about why he believed in this deal, why he was willing to risk his money, why he thought it was the right thing to do. Another shareholder stood up. "Who's going to run Hartwell if this deal goes through? Who's going to be CEO?" I stood up slowly. Every eye in the room turned to me. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. "My name is Robert Hartwell," I said. No relation to the founders, though I've been asked that question 1,000 times over the years. I worked at this company for 37 years. I built the systems most of you use every day. I trained half the engineers in this room. I hold 17 patents that have generated hundreds of millions in revenue. I've seen this company through recessions and booms, through technological revolutions and industry disruptions. I've adapted and evolved and stayed relevant through 4 decades of change. I looked directly at Marcus. 6 weeks ago, I was fired, told I was too old, too obsolete, from a different era. Told that this company needed digital natives who understood modern technology better than someone like me possibly could. I pulled out a folder and held it up. This folder contains documentation of financial irregularities in the company's reporting, inflated revenue projections, hidden liabilities, fraudulent representations that would constitute securities fraud. The room erupted. Reporters started typing furiously. Shareholders started shouting questions. Marcus went white. Board members started whispering urgently to each other. "I've provided copies of this documentation to the SEC," I continued, my voice cutting through the chaos, "and to Apex Technologies, which is why they withdrew their offer. I suspect they'll want to reconsider their bid once they review it. But I'm not here to destroy this company. I'm here to save it." I looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as I could. "You have a choice today. You can vote to give the board more time, let them find another buyer, hope that the fraud doesn't come to light, hope that the SEC investigation doesn't find anything, hope that everything works out somehow. Or you can accept our offer. Let us fix what's broken. Let us clean house. Let us bring in honest leadership. Let us preserve what's valuable about this company while holding accountable the people who betrayed your trust." I paused, letting the words sink in. This isn't just about money. It's not just about who pays more per share. It's about integrity. It's about accountability. It's about building something that lasts instead of extracting short-term value and leaving destruction in your wake. I sat down. The room was silent for a moment, and then the questions started again. Shareholders wanted details. They wanted to see the evidence. They wanted to understand what had happened and why, and what it meant for their investment. We spent 2 hours answering questions, showing documents, explaining the fraud and the cover-up, and the plan to sell the company based on false information. Sarah stood up and walked them through the accounting irregularities, explaining in clear terms how the board had manipulated the numbers. Tom explained the legal implications, the potential criminal charges, the civil liability. David and the other investors explained why they believed in the deal, why they were willing to risk their money, why they thought this was the right path forward. And slowly, gradually, I could see the mood in the room shifting. The shareholders were angry. Angry at the board for lying to them. Angry at Marcus for betraying their trust. Angry at themselves for not seeing it sooner. But they were also hopeful. Hopeful that maybe, just maybe, this could be fixed. That maybe the company could be saved. That maybe their investment wasn't a total loss. The vote took 2 hours. Proxies had to be counted. Lawyers argued over procedural issues. Marcus tried every trick in the book to delay, to deflect, to derail. He challenged the validity of certain proxy votes. He argued that shareholders hadn't had enough time to consider the offer. He claimed that our documentation was fraudulent, that Sarah had fabricated the evidence, that this was all an elaborate scheme to steal the company. But in the end, numbers don't lie, and the shareholders had seen enough. They'd seen the evidence of fraud. They'd seen the higher price we were offering. They'd seen the commitment to accountability and integrity. And they'd made their choice. The final tally was announced at 4:37 p.m. 67% of shareholders voted to accept our offer. The Apex deal was dead. Our deal was approved. And Marcus Webb's reign as CEO was over. The room erupted in chaos. Reporters rushed out to file their stories. Shareholders started talking excitedly among themselves. Board members sat in stunned silence, processing what had just happened. Marcus looked like he'd been punched in the gut. I sat there, feeling a strange mix of triumph and exhaustion. We'd won against all odds, against a board of directors with unlimited resources, against a CEO who'd been willing to do anything to hold on to power. We'd won. David clapped me on the shoulder. "You did it," he said, grinning. "You actually did it. You bought the company that fired you." Sarah was crying, tears of relief streaming down her face. Tom was already on his phone, calling his office, starting the process of executing the deal and replacing the board. Catherine, who'd been watching from the back of the room, came over and hugged me. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "You did the right thing." After the meeting, after the reporters had left and the shareholders had filed out, I found Marcus in his office. He was packing his things into a cardboard box, the same kind of box they'd probably expected me to use 6 weeks ago. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "You destroyed me," he said without looking up. His voice was flat, defeated. "You destroyed my career. You destroyed my reputation. You destroyed everything I built." "No," I replied, leaning against the doorframe. "You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone saw it. You committed fraud. You lied to shareholders. You tried to sell the company based on false information. You did this to yourself. All I did was hold you accountable." He finally looked at me. There was no calculation in his eyes now. No satisfaction, no power, just defeat. Just the realization that he'd lost everything. "I was trying to save the company," he said weakly. "The Apex deal would have been good for everyone. The shareholders would have gotten a premium. The employees would have kept their jobs. Everyone would have one. The Apex deal would have made you rich and destroyed everyone else." I interrupted. "Don't pretend this was about the company. It was about you. It was about your golden parachute and your stock options and your next executive position. It was always about you." He slumped into his chair, the chair that would soon be mine. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," I said. "Now we rebuild. We fix the damage you did. We clean up the accounting. We renegotiate the unprofitable contracts. We invest in the divisions that actually work. We bring back the employees you forced out. We make this company what it should have been all along. A company built on integrity and excellence and respect for the people who do the work." I turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Marcus, that severance package you offered me, 6 months' salary, I'm offering you 2 weeks. Seems fair, doesn't it?" I walked out, leaving him sitting in his empty office, surrounded by boxers and broken dreams. The building felt different as I walked through it. The same hallways, the same cubicles, the same conference rooms, but different. Because now it was mine. Now I had the power to fix it. Now I had the responsibility to make it right. 3 months after the takeover, Hartwell Industries was a different company. We'd cleaned house. The board members who'd participated in the fraud were gone. Some had resigned, some had been fired. 2 were facing criminal charges. Marcus was gone, his golden parachute denied, his reputation destroyed. He'd probably never work in the industry again. Jason Chen, the 29-year-old digital native, had actually turned out to be a decent kid. Once we got rid of Marcus's influence, once we gave him proper mentorship and realistic expectations, he'd admitted he was in over his head. We'd made him a senior engineer instead of CTO. He was much better at building things than managing people. Sarah Chen became our new CFO. She'd earned it. She'd risked everything to do the right thing, and now she was being rewarded for her integrity. We brought back 17 employees who'd been forced out in the restructuring. Turns out, experience matters. Turns out, institutional knowledge is valuable. Turns out, you can't just replace decades of expertise with youth and enthusiasm. We renegotiated the unprofitable contracts. Some clients weren't happy, but they understood. They'd rather have honest pricing than a vendor that went bankrupt halfway through the project. We invested in the divisions that were actually profitable. We shut down the failed product line that had been bleeding money. We sold off the problematic acquisition from 2023, taking a loss but stopping the hemorrhaging. We fixed the accounting. We brought in forensic accountants who went through everything with a fine-tooth comb. They found more irregularities than even Sarah had discovered. The fraud had been going on for longer than we'd thought, had been more extensive than we'd realized. We reported it all to the SEC. We cooperated fully with their investigation. We provided every document they requested, every email, every spreadsheet. We held people accountable, even when it was painful, even when it meant admitting how bad things had been. And slowly, gradually, the company started to recover. The stock price stabilized. Clients who'd been worried about our financial health renewed their contracts. Employees who'd been demoralized by the toxic culture started to believe in the company again. We weren't out of the woods yet. We had years of work ahead of us. But we were moving in the right direction. We were building something sustainable. We were creating a company that valued integrity and excellence and respect for all employees, regardless of their age. I became CEO at 62 years old. Too old, they'd said. Obsolete, they'd said. From a different era, they'd said. Funny how that worked out. My office was Marcus's old office, the same office where he'd fired me 2 months earlier. I'd kept the mahogany desk, but I'd replaced everything else. New furniture, new artwork, new energy. The framed patents from my study at home now hung on the wall, proof of what experience and expertise could accomplish. Catherine came by for lunch once a week. She'd started doing that, said she wanted to make sure I was actually eating and not just living on coffee and determination. How does it feel? She asked one day, looking around at the office, at the view of the city, at the proof that we'd actually pulled it off. Surreal, I admitted. 6 months ago, I was being fired from this company. Now I own it. Now I'm responsible for 1,500 employees and their families. Now I have to make this work. You saved it, she corrected. There's a difference. You saved it from fraud and corruption. You saved it from being destroyed in a bad acquisition. You saved 1,500 jobs. You held powerful people accountable. That matters. I thought about that. About the journey from that cold leather chair where Marcus had fired me to this executive office where I now sat. About the risk we'd taken, betting everything we had on doing the right thing. About the people who'd believed in me, who'd trusted me, who'd been willing to risk their money on my judgment. Yeah, I said. I guess I did. That afternoon, I had a meeting with the engineering team, 23 people, ranging in age from 24 to 67, the future and the past, working together. Young engineers with fresh ideas and new perspectives. Older engineers with experience and wisdom and institutional knowledge. All of them valuable, all of them essential. I want to tell you something, I said. Something I learned the hard way. Age is just a number. Experience is a weapon. And when someone tells you you're too old, too obsolete, too much of a relic to matter, they're wrong. They're wrong because they're measuring the wrong things. They're measuring years instead of knowledge. They're measuring birth dates instead of accomplishments. They're measuring stereotypes instead of actual capability. I looked around the room at the faces watching me. Some skeptical, some curious, some already convinced. You have decades of experience, I said to the older engineers. You have skills that can't be taught in a classroom. You have knowledge that can't be downloaded from the internet. You have perspective that only comes from living through multiple technological revolutions and adapting to each one. Use it. I turned to the younger engineers, and you have fresh perspectives. You have new ideas. You have energy and enthusiasm and a willingness to challenge assumptions. Use that too. We need both. We need experience and innovation. We need wisdom and fresh thinking. We need people who remember how we got here and people who can imagine where we're going next. That's how we build something that lasts. A week later, I got an email that made me laugh out loud. It was from Apex Technologies. They wanted to meet. They wanted to discuss opportunities for collaboration. They wanted to explore whether there might be a partnership that made sense now that Hartwell Industries was under new management. We met for coffee. The same CEO I'd talked 2 months earlier when I'd warned him about the fraud. You know, he said, stirring his coffee, when you first came to me with that evidence, I thought you were crazy. I thought you were a disgruntled employee trying to sabotage a deal out of spite. I almost didn't believe you, but you were right about everything. The fraud, the hidden liabilities, the unprofitable contracts. If we'd completed that acquisition at the price we'd agreed to, it would have destroyed us. You saved my company. I just told you the truth, I said. What you did with that information was up to you. He smiled. We're looking for someone to lead our acquisition division, someone who understands how to evaluate companies, someone who can see through the bullshit and find the real value, someone who knows how to ask the right questions. The salary would make your eyes water. I looked at the offer letter he slid across the table. He wasn't kidding about the salary. It was more money than I'd made in my entire career at Hartwell. It was the kind of offer that would set me up for life, that would let me retire in luxury, that would solve every financial worry I'd ever had. I appreciate the offer, I said, sliding the folder back, but I'm exactly where I need to be. He smiled like he'd expected that answer. I figured you'd say that, but I had to try. As I walked back to my car, I realized something. 6 months ago, I had been fired for being too old. Today, I had turned down a job that would have made me rich because I was too busy being relevant. Life is funny that way. That night, I sat in my study at home, the same study where I'd plotted my revenge, the same desk where I'd discovered the fraud, the same chair where I'd decided to fight back. Catherine found me there, staring at my laptop screen. "What are you working on?" she asked. "Just thinking," I said. "About everything that's happened, about what it means." "And what does it mean?" she asked, sitting down across from me. I thought about that, about being fired at 62, about being told I was obsolete, about the rage and fear and determination that had driven me to risk everything, about the people who'd believed in me, about the company I'd saved, about the fraud I'd exposed, about the accountability I'd demanded. "It means that age is a story we tell ourselves," I said slowly. "Society tells us that at a certain point, we're done. We're supposed to step aside. We're supposed to make room for the young. We're supposed to accept that our time has passed. We're supposed to go quietly into retirement and irrelevance." I looked at my wife, this woman who'd believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, this woman who'd been willing to risk everything because she trusted my judgment, this woman who'd stood by me for 38 years and counting. "But that's bullshit," I continued. "Experience isn't a liability. It's a superpower. We've seen things, we've learned things, we've made mistakes and learned from them. We know how the world really works. We have perspective that youth can't replicate. And when someone tries to push us aside because of our age, when someone decides we're obsolete without even bothering to understand what we know, when someone measures our value by our birth date instead of our accomplishments, we have the knowledge and the connections and the sheer stubborn determination to push back and win." Catherine smiled. "So what are you going to do with that knowledge? What's next?" I pulled up a document I'd been working on, a plan, a strategy, a vision for what Hartwell Industries could become. "We're going to build something," I said, "something that lasts, something that values people for what they know and what they can do, not for how old they are. We're going to create a company where experience is respected and innovation is encouraged, where older workers mentor younger workers and younger workers challenge older workers to think differently, where age is just one characteristic among many, not a disqualification. We're going to prove that you can build a successful company without worshiping youth, that you can innovate without pushing out everyone over 50, that experience and fresh thinking aren't opposites, they're complements." Over the next year, that's exactly what we did. We built a company culture that valued diversity in all its forms, including age diversity. We created mentorship programs that paired experienced engineers with recent graduates. We created reverse mentorship programs where young employees taught older employees about new technologies and trends. We created innovation teams that deliberately mixed ages, bringing together the wisdom of experience and the energy of youth. We created flexible work arrangements that recognize that people at different life stages have different needs. We created training programs that helped everyone, regardless of age, stay current with new technologies. We made it clear that learning and growth were expected at every age, that nobody was ever too old to develop new skills, that staying relevant was a choice, not a function of birth year, and it worked. Our employee satisfaction scores went up, our innovation metrics improved, our retention rates increased, our reputation in the industry grew. We became known as a company that valued people, that treated employees with respect, that built careers instead of just filling positions. We became a place where talented people wanted to work, regardless of their age. Young graduates wanted to work for us because they knew they'd learn from experienced mentors. Mid-career professionals wanted to work for us because they knew their experience would be valued. Older workers wanted to work for us because they knew they wouldn't be pushed out the moment they turned 50. We became living proof that age discrimination wasn't just wrong, it was stupid. That companies that pushed out experienced workers were throwing away institutional knowledge and expertise that couldn't be replaced. That the obsession with youth was costing companies billions in lost productivity and failed projects and repeated mistakes. I started speaking at industry conferences about our experience, about the fraud we'd uncovered, about the hostile takeover we'd executed, about the culture we'd built, about the lessons we'd learned. And everywhere I spoke, I saw the same thing. Older workers who'd been pushed aside, who'd been told they were obsolete, who'd been made to feel like they didn't matter anymore. And I told them the same thing every time. You're not obsolete, you're not irrelevant. You're not from a different era. You're experienced, you're knowledgeable, you're valuable. And if someone can't see that, if someone measures your worth by your age instead of your accomplishments, that's their failure, not yours. Don't accept their narrative. Don't believe the lie that your best days are behind you. Your best days are the ones you choose to make count. I was fired at 62 for being too old. Today, I own the company that fired me. I rebuilt it. I saved it. And I did it because I refused to accept someone else's definition of my worth. You can do the same. The response was overwhelming. I got emails from people all over the country, all over the world. People who'd been pushed out of their jobs because of their age, people who'd been told they were obsolete, people who'd been made to feel invisible, and they all said the same thing. Thank you. Thank you for fighting back. Thank you for proving that age discrimination is wrong. Thank you for showing that experience matters. Thank you for giving us hope. Some of them asked for advice. How do I fight back? How do I prove my worth? How do I stay relevant? And I told them, document everything. Build your network. Keep learning. Stay current. Don't let anyone define you by your age. And if you're pushed out, if you're fired or forced into early retirement, don't go quietly. Fight back. Hold them accountable. Use your experience and your knowledge and your connections to show them they made a mistake. Some of them asked for jobs. Can I work for Hartwell Industries? Do you have openings? Would you hire someone like me? And when we had positions that matched their skills, we did hire them. We hired talented people who'd been pushed out of other companies because of their age. We gave them a chance to prove that they still had value, that they could still contribute, that they weren't obsolete. And they proved it. Every single one of them proved it. They brought experience and wisdom and institutional knowledge that made us better. They mentored younger employees. They solved problems that nobody else could solve. They built things that lasted. They were exactly what we needed. 2 years after the takeover, Hartwell Industries was thriving. We'd grown revenue by 23%. We'd improved profit margins by 15%. We'd won major contracts with clients who valued our reputation for integrity and excellence. We'd launched new products that actually worked, that customers actually wanted, that generated real revenue, instead of just burning through development budget. We'd been named one of the best places to work in our industry. We'd been featured in business magazines as a case study in successful turnarounds. We'd been invited to speak at conferences about corporate governance and ethical leadership. And most importantly, we'd built something sustainable, something that would last, something that valued people and integrity and long-term thinking, instead of just quarterly results in stock prices and executive compensation. I was 64 years old, still too old, according to the conventional wisdom. Still obsolete, according to the people who worshipped youth. Still from a different era, according to the digital natives who thought technology started with smartphones. But I was also the CEO of a thriving company, the owner of a business that employed 1,500 people, the person who'd exposed fraud and held powerful people accountable, the leader who'd built a culture that valued experience and innovation equally. And I wasn't done. I had plans. Plans to grow the company. Plans to expand into new markets. Plans to develop new technologies. Plans to build something even bigger and better. Because age is just a number. Experience is power.